You've worked with the biggest names in the industry. You've got Karan Johar, Wes Anderson, Amitabh Bachchan.
When I was very young at school, they asked me to be a strawberry, and I think that was a turning point in my move to New York. It took a while. Obviously, I didn't know anybody. Nobody opened a door for me. Neither local, neither foreign. I was a woman. I'm Bengali. I'm not Indian. I'm Muslim. I'm not Hindu. I mean, all kinds of layers of things going on. I mean, I had to sort of open all my own doors. Bollywood came knocking on my door. It is still quite male-dominated, but there are some formidable, legendary, female executive. I worked only with very strong female producers.
Hi, welcome to Pursuing Passions. This is a platform where we talk about different stories and different journeys, but all with a common thread. What motivates people, their passion journeys, and why they do it, the impact that it creates. Everybody has a story. I'm so excited to introduce our guest for today, Anadil Hossain. She is an incredible woman who has got an incredible story. She's an independent producer based out of New York and the founder of her own production company, Diliwood. But she started a long time ago with nothing in a new country, but with dreams of making movies. And that she did with some of the biggest names that we know today, Wes Anderson, Mira, Nair, Karan Johar, on some of the most memorable films that they have made. Darjeeling Limited, Namesake, Kal Ho Na Ho, just to name a few. But her journey is so exciting, not because of the films that she has made, but of the narrative that she's trying to say with her filmmaking. It's global storytelling, but with impact. She has stopped through her journey to give back by working for the UN. She has made 2 socially strong, impactful films that have got awards world over. So let's see and let's hear from Anadil about what changed and how did she get to where she is. I just feel for so long that I have heard so many amazing stories and they need to be brought to light. And I think when I met you, I felt the same thing because you've worked with the biggest names in the industry. You've got Karan Johar, Wes Anderson, Amitabh Bachchan. How was it? Where did your story start? How did you find this passion and purpose in the most amazing medium that we know, film?
When I was very young at school, I actually thought I wanted to be an actor, and I pursued drama. I thought that's where I would land up, and I did, sort of went to drama school and did a little bit of theatre here and there. At drama school, they asked me to be a strawberry, and I think that was a turning point in my early career where I realised maybe this wasn't meant for me. So strawberry, yeah. It was the strawberry that put me over the edge. I just couldn't channel the inner strawberry in me. I was always passionate about film. I remember that. I used to watch films regularly at the theatre with my friends every weekend. And then as I got a little older in my sort of late teens, as I was doing my A-levels, thinking about college and things like that, I was really on the English literature or art school track. That was like a given. And I started watching these really amazing Repertory film, at the Repertory cinema and Everyman up the road from me. I started watching all these sort of world cinema double bills and all these independent sort of filmmakers I remember Hal Hartley was, I used to watch triple bills. I just decided, okay, I want to study film. And, you'd heard of NYU Film School, so I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds cool. But honestly, I didn't have any of the help or support within the academic structure in the UK to pursue that. And so I did my own research and I figured out where I could study film, and I ended up going to University of East Anglia, which offered a sort of a hybrid degree of film and literature with 1 year abroad in America. So I thought, well, that was a good compromise in a way that I get to have education here as well as a little bit in America, but do sort of literature, which I've always loved, and touching on film and the crossover. So I studied film, and then straight out of college, I decided to go straight into the practical field of filmmaking. And back then, there weren't that many options. I mean, you really did have to go through the sort of like the TV route, really. You joined maybe one of the, channels. Back then 4 channels. And the only major studio in England back then was Working Title. And so, it was really hard to penetrate that world if you didn't know somebody. So I ended up getting a corporate job. It was just a starter job in central London, which was actually amazing because it was a small company. It was quite an innovative company because they had one arm that was doing web design and the other arm that did just very standard sort of corporate videos. But quite a lot of international work. So I was setting up a lot of international shoots and going on smaller shoots. And I had a wonderful woman who I kind of like, who mentored me. And then, got to a point where I just wanted to really do film and work in the industry. And I felt like that my opportunities here in England weren't going to be what I wanted, and I wanted to just try my luck in America. And I had a American passport, which was a huge advantage. And I say that because I was able to just land and work legally. Otherwise, I couldn't have made that huge life decision. So really, I just packed my bags and took a little chunk of change and landed in New York.
But that's so it's a great jumpstart to have the US passport. Was that deliberate by your parents?
No,
because you grew up in the UK.
I did, and Bangladesh. So I.
You grew up in Bangladesh as well?
Yes. Okay. So my father was working at the World Bank in DC, and so my brother and I were born there. But it was right around the time of the liberation war in Bangladesh, and we got our independence in 1971, and shortly after my parents decided to move back and be part of that generation sort of that built the nation. And my father's work was very much in development, and so he decided to take us back. So from age 1 to 8 I was in Bangladesh, and then at age 8 we moved to London with my mother, and so I did all my formal education here, and then in my mid-20s I moved to New York.
What are double bills, triple bills?
What's
Everyman Cinema?
Yes.
How can you how does that?
The Everyman Cinema, which has now become more of a corporate entity, I think they've expanded. So the Everyman was a standalone, tiny local cinema in Hampstead, where I lived, up the road. And a Repertory cinema is they have a repertoire of independent films which they curate. So it's not the usual the usual films you would see at another major commercial. So they did all the art house cinemas. They also did old films, which they would curate and program. Double bills are literally 2 films back to back. So you just go and they program 2 bills. And triple bills were really like a marathon. So they'd have 3 films by the same director. Sometimes maybe it was Spike Lee, or maybe it was a Woody Allen triple bill, or they put some Scorsese film with a newer director. So it was kind of curated either by theme or by director.
And do you feel like studying film through words gave you another twist or an angle that the other person wouldn't have, just straight up working in film?
So I'm a lover of words. I love language. But more than that, I was a lover of poetry and literature. So I really loved words and how different words translate across different languages and different, kind of cultural. I always say film is a visual language. I mean, it is a language. I love literature, and I did study a lot of like book to film adaptations as well. That journey works. And then when I finally started my career, I have been fortunate enough to do a lot of book to film adaptations, both fiction and non-fiction.
Yeah, but which film did you recently work, which was an adaptation that you can say that you really delved deep into it and you enjoyed the transfer from book to film?
We did I worked on Namesake, and I wasn't as involved in the creative adaptation of that one. Reluctant Fundamentalist was one that I thought was really interesting to translate it, because of the format of the book and the revelation. You can't do that in a visual format. So there are things you can do in written form in terms of how you slowly reveal certain things which you just simply cannot do when you have a visual format. So that was very interesting, and to see how we keep the suspense in the visual adaptation. And, certain scenes, how they work, and you're condensing a book into a 2-hour experience.
And Mira Nair, both are Mira Nair, and she's a formidable name to work with. The learning must have been immense. And how was it working with Mira Nair?
Well, I grew up with her as my hero. I mean, as a young teenager, she was one of the few at that time female South Asian filmmakers that were breaking, barriers. And I remember reading her articles in Sunday newspapers and thinking, one day I'm going to meet her.
You did dream.
I did, absolutely. And I didn't know where it was going to be, but it ended up being in an elevator in New York in her office. I had gone in for an interview, I think, and she was exiting, and I was so sort of starstruck. But then, of course, now I've had a very long working relationship with her over.
But do you think your passion persisted? Like you followed your purpose or your passion in a certain way that got you so so quickly, I would say, to where you wanted to be, or was it a long road?
A relatively quick road to, I mean, quick and, well, I shouldn't say that. So American independent cinema. I mean, I studied, kind of art house cinema and university. I came with all my lofty intellectual aspirations of doing art house film. Moved to New York and not LA specifically, because a lot of people ask why New York. I mean, it was closer to London. I just felt culturally it was more my fit. And LA just seemed, like a city that like lives, breathes one industry. And then everyone's trying to make it in that industry. And something about LA didn't appeal to me, and quite frankly still doesn't. But I moved to New York. It took a while. Obviously, I didn't know anybody. I started just doing menial kind of production jobs. But I rose quite quickly because I had more experience. And I just had this drive, I think. Part of it was luck, but I didn't really have any. It's not like I had connections, and nobody opened a door for me. I mean, I had to sort of open all my own doors. And so what really was a turning point was I was doing a lot of independent work, in the film scene, and then Bollywood came knocking on my door. And I remember thinking, I did not go to film school and, come to New York to end up on a Bollywood film set. I mean, you can imagine, it was like the irony of it. And honestly, I hadn't grown up watching Bollywood films. I mean, I used to watch a few with my grandmother in Bangladesh, but my mother was not a huge Bollywood film person.
And I feel Bollywood doesn't knock, it bangs.
It
just bangs down the door.
Yeah. So there I was in New York, and there was a short, it was supposed to be a few days shoot, like 5 days, 10 days pickups in New York, and it was Kalhonaho. And I think, they saw this little Bengali, bespectacled little brown girl, and they're like, wait, this is not what we were expecting when we came to New York. And similarly, I was like, okay, these are good, this is a good team, they have a good reputation, and it seems like this is a good cast, and it'll be okay. And of course, 10 days turned into like 70 days, and the whole film ended up being shot in New York, pretty much, other than some studio. Spot boys are sort of like, they do everything. They're like the hidden gems of the Bollywood film industry. They do makeup, they do your costume, they're your peon, they get you water, they just do everything. They're like all in one. And we had these spot boys, and suddenly we were on Fifth Avenue, and there was like a BMW picture car, and it was like a really fancy kind of shoot location right outside, I can't remember, some fancy store. And I turn around, and there's this guy in chappals making chai on the street with next to the generator plugged in with his. And I was like, oh my God. And then, you know what? This is brilliant. This is it. This is, cultures coming together. And at the same time, I often joke like, well, that was happening.
Do you feel like, because I think there's a stereotype out here that Hollywood is very structured, or, I mean, does Hollywood include New York? Can it be the same bandwagon? Yeah. Okay.
And say the US film industry.
But do you feel like Bollywood is more of an ego system where you feel you're pandering to like the egos of the actors over the director, or is it changing now? Did you find there was a big disparity in the way a set is, your schedule is conducted?
There was a reputation that Indians come into town, they're unruly, they don't abide by the rules, and then they skip town without paying. And that was the case for some of these productions, but totally different practices. Yes, there's a totally different framework of how Bollywood is structured creatively and like technically in terms of how you make the film and what kind of storytelling you do. And Hollywood has its own norms. Now, I don't think one is better than the other. It's what works in everyone's backyard. And there's some efficiencies in both, and there's some great inefficiencies in both. And for me, what was fascinating was to find the efficiencies in both and try and bring them together and get rid of the inefficiencies.
And as a producer, do you feel like you see things, or as a producer of films, you dip in and out of the movie, because of course the creative content comes to you, and then you are in the middle of production trying to finish it. So I saw this TV show called The Offer, where it really makes the producer the hero. Where like without the producer, maybe The Godfather would never have been made. So do you feel like as a producer, a lot of it rests on your shoulders?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
To make sure the project gets done despite clash of egos, or despite certain like problems that come up logistically?
Yeah, I mean, I can say this as a woman. I mean, it's like mother hen. I literally, people often, I'd say this as a joke at conferences when people say, what does a producer do? And I literally say it's like breastfeeding grown men. It's literally, you're just like the chief cook, bottle washer, the mother, the sister, the girlfriend, the wife. You do. Ultimately, the buck stops. The director's vision. And often, the director is also a producer on set.
Where does this passion for production come from? Because I feel like you loved film and literature. Mm-hmm. You could have gone down script writing.
Yeah, it's true.
Very easily.
Yeah.
But how did you get the passion to produce?
I don't know. I think that was an organic. So at college, we were one small portion of the degree was to produce a short film. And my friend and I were going to produce ours together, 3 of us. And he wrote it, and he came to me with a script, and he said, "Okay, you're going to direct it, and I'm going to produce it, and this is going to be our project." And he was more of a, he still is a formidable writer and a very successful producer. On set, day one, we were first seen, and I had no clue. I was like, "How do you direct?" But I had packed lunch for everybody. And I knew that was it. I was destined to be more of a producer. Yeah. I was thinking logistics. I was like, okay, how are we going to get there? And where are we going to eat? And wait, what about the set? And, where are the actors coming from? So my brain kicked into a different mode, just in terms of organizing and figuring out, how are we making this? It was really interesting to see both our approaches. And I said, no, you direct this. It's your screenplay and you have the vision. And I want to help realize that vision. And we just fell into our roles. And then I never ever thought of directing. For some reason it's not like you go to school and say, I want to be a producer.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no roadmap to that.
No.
But I mean, when I graduated, I was looking, you start anywhere. You started as a PA, production assistant. I happened to get this gig as a office production assistant. But it was a very small team, and I had, direct, mentorship from the producer, so I didn't feel like I was doing menial work, and it was like a corporate gig. I was lucky, and I think that just you just kind of fell into that, and I was coordinating. And then when I landed in America, I just got production assistant jobs, and then next thing you know, you do production manage, and then you line produce, and then you kind of go on that track. If you want to direct, it's a very different track, and I just fell into the producing track, and I think it just just suited my acumen. And that's why I always, when kids come on the set and they like, oh yeah, I directed 10 short films, I'm like, really know your acumen. Everybody wants to direct. Almost everybody comes in saying, I really need a good producer for my film. That's always the one thing that people struggle to find, or and there's no roadmap. Nobody really, well, now they teach it, but back then there was no course like producing.
I want to be a producer.
Yeah, and it wasn't sexy. Who wants to be a producer?
But do you think it was primarily a male-dominated industry, or do you think it still is?
Well, funnily enough, yes. If you think about in America, in LA, it is still quite male-dominated, but there are some formidable, legendary, female executives, let's just say. But funnily enough, in my career, especially in New York, I've worked only with very strong female producers.
Early on,
almost my entire career. I worked with really strong, I learned under strong female producers.
Do you think that empowered or in a way enabled you to kind of follow that purpose or your passion towards becoming an independent producer starting your own company?
I think so. I basically... Part of the reason why I started my own company was because I had to start facilitating these big shoots. I'm the reluctant kind of CEO or whatever you want to call it. I wanted to be an independent filmmaker. I didn't want all the hassle of having a company and, service provider, all of that. It wasn't a plan. But it happened because of the Bollywood films. I had to create a structure with which to actually facilitate these shoots. And then it was a better way, for many reasons, to be an entity and gives you much more flexibility. And I credit that to my business partner of 25 years who said, set up a, LLC or a company through which you can operate. And then it sort of grew organically. But what grew with it is just the fact that I became this small, bespoke, multi-culti kind of, tiny company that was really about global emerging market content. And that's where we created our niche, doing Hollywood overseas and Bollywood in America.
Because Bollywood was Kal Ho Na Ho was your big ticket.
Yeah.
And then that followed very quickly with a lot of big films. You had Ashutosh Kovarikar.
Yes, yeah.
Some of the biggest names have worked with you. I think Kabhi Alvida was after that.
Yes, that's right. And then I did a little thing for Rakesh Mehra and Delhi 6. And then we, again, did the US shoot for What's Your Rashi with Ashutosh. But at that time, I could have created a very robust business just doing that.
Like catering to the Indian...
I mean, I could have owned that market. I had other passions. I wanted to be, not just a service provider. And I had projects I wanted to do. And at the same time, actually, I was offered some pretty lucrative opportunities to be head of physical production in India for Sony and Disney. And these are big corporate gigs. I could have had a very different career trajectory. But I decided to stay the course and build Diliwood instead. And I did. I built Diliwood up to being a wonderful little production company with a great team of about 6 or 7 staff. And then we ended up doing a lot more interesting projects overseas. And then we, produced some in-house projects that were passion projects, if you want to call them that.
So Diliwood is your production company?
Yes.
And it's been around for now
over 2 decades.
Yeah, almost 25 years.
Yeah.
And I like, how did Diliwood? So you have Hollywood, Bollywood, and you have Diliwood.
Well, that's exactly why, because I was doing Hollywood and Bollywood, and my nickname is Dilly, and everybody, on set, I think somebody started calling me Miss Diliwood. I think that's how, I don't know how it started, but something like that.
Yeah.
And when I was establishing the company, I thought, what can I call it? And I thought, I'm going to be my own empire. It was whimsical. I don't take myself that seriously. I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm going to be like, this third kind of empire. But but it worked, and it was cute, and everybody liked it, and it just somehow it worked.
Do you feel like your personal map, which went across all the continents, gave you that feeling that I don't want to be tied to a region? Because you brought Hollywood to India. You had the Darjeeling Limited that you worked on, which is with some of the, like Owen Wilson.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love Owen Wilson? Working with him must have been, how was it? Can you tell me, like, how is he as a person?
He was very humble, very sweet, very quiet. He was, when you take these Hollywood actors and they were stuck in a desert eating dust for like 4 months on a train and in and out of rivers and whatnot, poor thing. I think it was a real shock to their system because it was really quite remote and they didn't have, their usual luxuries and also adulation. There was no fans there. Nobody recognized them. Maybe it was nice actually because they were just sort of in some remote village where nobody knew, who they were. But Owen was very non-Hollywood, I would say. He was very, undemanding and quite gentle and sweet. Yeah,
and he and Wes Anderson have a strong relationship in terms of just work and collabs.
Yeah.
And Wes Anderson himself is a bit of I don't want to say auteur director, but he's got something different from the commercial.
Oh, he's definitely an auteur.
He is, right?
Oh, for sure.
So you've got Fantastic Mr. Fox, which came, I think, very soon after.
Right, he was
did you
prepping that when we were shooting,
Can you tell me a bit of how it was with Wes Anderson? And
Wes had 2 or 3 big hits by then. He had Bottle Rocket, his feature, then Tenenbaums and Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I think, Darjeeling was, his 4th film. And he really, I would say his career really skyrocketed after Grand Budapest, where he became much more of a global name and sensation. And so we were still working with him when he hadn't really reached his peak kind of, recognition or fame. But also, as an artist, he was still kind of evolving, if you will. But he had a very distinct style, which is very, in fact, a lot of the crew that he worked with on Darjeeling then went on to stay with him, including Sanjay Sami, our key grip. The way we worked in India, he was able to do things he could never do with, a traditional Western crew, and he fell in love with that. And he's taken Sanjay to like all his films. I mean, he's very loyal at West, so he finds his set crew and that's it. So Adam Stockhausen, who was our art director at the time, and now has been his production designer for all his films since, and I think Bob Yeoman is pretty much the only DP he works with. So he's very, and that's why he can kind of recreate that world. He creates his film family, and then he creates these very specific, worlds.
And production is all about getting things done. Yeah. And it's a bit funny when you rock up as a producer and you're not from there and you have to still get things done. Yeah. Do you think that's the challenge that you love or you embrace?
Yeah. The challenge is when there's no infrastructure and there's no actual local crew. If it's a city that already has or a country that has a robust film business, like Bombay, obviously, or like India, then it's about trying to find the talent, right? It's not about trying to, create the talent or, find something out of nothing. But then you go to really remote places, and that's where the challenges are different.
How do you work at the UN from being a producer? And then you end up at the UN.
It was challenging. It was different for sure. I was nominated for a job, and I was kind of hired as a principal communications advisor to the High Commissioner for Refugee Agency. So it was a very big human rights agency within the UN. It's like 20,000, staff across 140 something countries. I was headquartered in Geneva, and my job was to basically come in as an outsider, and sort of think about strategically how they were communicating, across different platforms.
But everybody has a story.
Yes.
I mean,
absolutely. But it's how do you tell those stories in an effective way?
How long was your UN?
2.5 years.
And where were you working out of?
I was in Geneva, but traveling obviously to refugee camps.
So did Diliwood take a back seat during the
Diliwood
2.5 years?
was dormant during that period, and I kind of went in fully corporate. I mean, in-house to do
Was this a conscious decision for you to give Diliwood a bit of a break and go to Geneva? And was it a give back of sorts?
Well, no, because in Diliwood, we did a lot of social impact storytelling, documentaries. We did a lot of projects for NGOs and institutions to policy shifts, and so that was always a very much part of our DNA. And I did 2 huge social impact documentaries about climate change and global arms trade, which to this day are being used for policy and
can you tell
advocacy.
Us a bit about?
So one was based on the book This Changes Everything by Naomi Klein, Canadian academic, intellectual and activist who has written many books, and we adapted this into, the funny thing is she was writing the book while we were making the film, so it was kind of like a parallel track, which I don't recommend. But it was one of the, I would say it was groundbreaking in what it was saying about the climate crisis way before ahead of its time, so the canary in the coal mine, about where we were heading. I was also adapting a book by, as it happens, my brother-in-law, a South African former member of ANC who has, investigative journalist, former politician, activist, and that was a book about the global arms trade and sort of the military, corporate and media industrial complex that kind of makes up the machinations of the global arms trade. So 2 very heavy topics if you think about sort of climate and
what are their names? So This Changes Everything
and Shadow World.
Shadow World.
Yes.
And both have awards to them. And
yes, they were both award winning, and they were both released in 2016. And
so both films in the same year?
Yeah, so we were making, I mean, they were sort of like a 5-year.
But then did you actively seek out those scripts and say, I'm going to produce this? Because there are a lot of boutique production companies coming up, I feel, across the world. A lot of them spearheaded by girls, by young women with dreams of, producing content that's impact worthy as well as entertaining. But did you seek those scripts out, or did they fall into your lap? How did you end up?
Well, the climate change film was brought to us by our producing partners. So we were in a shared office space with Danny Glover's production company, Liverture Films. Producer brought that project to us, and we brought Shadow World to the table as well, because obviously I had been sort of listening to my brother-in-law, while he was writing the book over a course of, I don't know, almost a decade. He would share the stories, and we were fascinated by it all. And it just, so we thought, oh, well, it would be really interesting to adapt this into like a gritty documentary. So one came to us and the other one we kind of brought to the table. So we decided to produce them together, and that's how we ended up.
Did that change anything for Diliwood? Did you feel like you need to do more of it, or take a break and do some of the other stuff?
It was very, we produced those in-house, so financially it was quite a burden. I mean, we raised money, but we were also putting in a lot of our resources, both production companies, and it was very difficult because there was a lot of projects that I would have done that I couldn't do because I was doing these two projects, and they were quite high-profile Hollywood films that, you know, I had prepped for years or I had worked on, and so there was an opportunity cost for sure. But I was you know, we're very proud of those projects, and they were really important projects. And to this day, they kind of stand the test of time. A lot of things so after we finished those films, I was sort of like getting back on track to doing more of the projects that we were developing in-house that were fiction and a little bit more commercial, let's just say. This very unique opportunity with the UN came up, and my father had just passed away, and that was kind of more his world. And a lot of people ask me, it's like, why on earth you, Dilly, you of all people would join the UN? And I think it was a unique opportunity that just dropped in my lap. And it was, I think, a little bit to honor my dad's legacy.
Do you feel you were speaking to him in a way by doing it, or like doing something that he would have wanted you to?
Yeah, for sure. I think my mother would have talked me out of it, and my dad would have been very sort of wowed and proud.
What an honor, you must do it.
Yes, exactly, basically. Yeah. So I think all those things. And I also thought, well, you know, it's COVID, production's not really, you know, the film industry was kind of reeling a little bit from lockdown. So it was an opportunity to do something.
How do producers feel about streaming platforms?
Well, I mean, streaming platforms include obviously your Amazon and they're all streaming platforms. So I think you mean these short form streaming platforms?
Just the options available. So right. you have Spotify come on now, which has not upstaged Netflix, but it's just kind of sharing the room in a very big way with what was just Netflix's space or Amazon Prime space. Mm-hmm. So you have so many platforms that are coming up as we speak. And they are allowing different stories to come up and present themselves, like you said, microdramas.
Well, I mean, microdramas are living on completely different platforms that are becoming as popular. Yeah. So there are these parallel, 4 main microdrama platforms that are becoming as big as, maybe not as big as in terms of revenue, but it's a scale and volume kind of business, and they're getting up there. So that's a whole parallel streaming track. Then of course you have sort of your user generated, YouTube and other platforms that I'm not even that up on, to be honest. But I think what's interesting is we are at another inflection point in the industry. I feel like I've gone through so many revolutions, from film to digital and from theatrical to streaming, and now it's kind of AI is upon us, and what that's going to entail. But I think it's the democratization of content production, distribution, and consumption.
How would a producer earn money? So you made your 2 films, which I'm going to now go and watch. I was just going to, is there a way to do good and make money? How do you?
It's hard. I mean, actually, the metrics of the business is nuts. I mean, if somebody actually sat down and explained it to a normal, kind of a lay person, they would be like, "You're nuts. I would never get into this business. It's like a complete crapshoot." Okay. And even as you raise money, you're kind of selling stories. The story, even that's a story. the how it's going to do well, and you're constantly selling a story, even in terms of how you think this film is going to perform or who it's going to reach, and you just don't know. I mean, all the algorithms, all the number crunching, all of that's ultimately still.
And with the microdramas, how are you going to successfully produce and monetize or make it financially profitable?
I'm just exploring. I mean, I think that aesthetically and creatively, microdramas are maybe completely the opposite of what I've spent my entire career doing. As a businesswoman, I'm like, well, this is a growing market. It's not going away. It's only going to grow more, and where are the gaps in the market? I'm always about, where are the gaps in the market? I've always done things a little bit ahead of the curve, or seen trends, or done things that nobody else was willing to do. We were exploring emerging market production when it wasn't a thing. This is way before global streaming platforms unlocked the world for global audiences. I had to convince, production assistants to work on a Bollywood film because I said, well, 1 billion people are going to watch this. Okay, that's all I can tell you. Yeah, exactly.
And then 1 billion people plus watched it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. So I don't know. The thing about microdramas, I think with any format, they start somewhere and they go somewhere else. So I think there is going to be room for this format to expand into maybe aesthetically and intellectually more palatable, or not, maybe. I don't know. I don't want to put a moral value judgment on it, but I'm just interested in the format, just in the same way when Bollywood came knocking on my door, I thought, ugh, Bollywood, this is so not me. But I learned so much, and I gained so much respect for the form and what it taught me. So I'm never too old to learn. No one's ever too old to learn. No one's really ever too old to reinvent, because I think we always have to continue to reinvent ourselves. And so I think, again, because there's such a huge inflection point in what's happening in the industry in terms of, Hollywood is sort of crumbling a little bit, and the traditional film formats, sort of infrastructure's crumbling a little bit. Everyone's having to figure out new ways to finance, to distribute, and new formats as well are emerging. So I think we have to stay on top of new trends. And if you want to evolve as a creative and as a business person, you have to see the trends, and you have to sort of not get on the bandwagon. You have to be mindful that it's, again, you have to lean into your acumen. You can never try and do something and kind of, think you're going to be great at it just because you were great at what you did before. But I think exploration is always really important. So I'm in that totally discovery, exploratory phase where I want to try exploring what opportunities there are, especially for South Asian markets. No one's really delved into it for South Asian markets yet, and the sensibility and what you can and cannot do is slightly different. So I think that allows room for some interesting opportunities.
I wish you luck, because I feel the magic happens in the unknown.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to your microdramas.
I'm just exploring. I mean, we may not end up, but I'd like to do one just to
get your feet wet and see where it's going.
Yeah, because it's such a bizarre, it's a very different, rigorous kind of conveyor belt process. And honestly speaking, sometimes when my time at Netflix felt a bit like that. It is like a conveyor belt. You're just sausage factory. You're just pushing it out. So what's the difference? It's just it's just a different format. So, and the audience is out there. But then I have my traditional films as well that I'm pursuing, and I, sometimes wake up thinking, well, who's going to watch this? But
so here's to Diliwood. Yes. Good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you, Anadil, for being here. It's been such a pleasure. Some more words?
Words. Oh, and it's a red, my favorite color. Let's see what this is. Oh my goodness. Oh wow, I've missed
but she
her
signed
here,
it for you.
and I missed her in New York. She's actually in our climate film. This Changes Everything.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Arundhati Roy, she's an activist.
She's amazing.
And an author.
I love that there's a picture of her smoking here.
Yes. Naughty.
She's amazing. She really is a unique.
She signed it, so
yeah, I'm so excited. I'll treasure this. I was looking for my next book to read. This is, oh my God, literally. Oh wow! Oh wow! This is amazing. Thank you so much. This is precious. Wow. I really will cherish this. This is really, really incredible.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all the attention that you've been giving the channel. But if this resonates with you, I would like to request you to please hit the subscribe button. It really makes a difference. Thank you.